Trevor Lawrence is 8th for Jamie, and Tua is 12th. And I'm pretty sure it's the exact opposite for Heath, where Tua is 8th and Lawrence is 12th. Yes. So actually, Lawrence is 11th. So Tua is 11th for Jamie. But basically, 8th and 12th, but flops. Tua versus Lawrence. Jamie likes Lawrence better, and Heath likes Tua better. Trevor Lawrence scored 43% of his fantasy points in a 5-game stretch. Tua scored 52% of his fantasy points in 4 games last year, week 2 and then weeks 8 through 10. Heath, you can have the first word here. Why you clearly, not even close, prefer Tua to Trevor Lawrence.
This is just going to be a Tua love fest. I don't have anything bad to say about Trevor Lawrence. But I do think that even with the addition of Calvin Ridley, Tua still has better weapons. And I think that within the industry, and especially amongst fans, people need to remember who Tua is. Like, this guy is a 19-year-old, took the starting job away from Jalen Hurts and finished 2nd in the Heisman race. Last year, he had a 5-game stretch where he was on pace for 5,300 yards and 41 touchdowns. And that doesn't include a game where he threw for 469 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think if Tua plays 17 games this year, he's going to be in the Allen, Mahomes, Hurts discussion.
Wow,
and
that's bold.
I know it is, but I think he's really good. He's got the best wide receiver duo in the league, and he's going to get to throw it a ton. And so, there's the risk that he gets hit with a concussion one time and it's all over. But I think we had that concern with Brandon Cooks for 2 or 3 years, and it didn't happen.
Right. Do you, Heath, hold what I said, 52% of his fantasy points came in 4 games, hold that against Tua? Because I have heard a little bit of, well, Trevor Lawrence had a good 5-game stretch. Back at it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it would bother me more if he had played more games.
Right.
I mean, 4 games was 40% of his season, right? Or 33% of his season?
Depends if you count the games. He left 1 game early with an injury. Tua played 13 games, so that's 12. So he scored. So if we get rid of that Bengals game where he scored 2.4 fantasy points, Tua scored 52% of his fantasy points in a third of his season.
Right.
Whereas Lauren, I'm not going to do the math. Jamie and I were trying to coordinate me muting Jamie's mic so he could clear his throat. And I did mute him for a while, and then totally missed the window there. And then you heard him clear his throat. All right, Jamie, you like Lawrence 4 spots better than Tua.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with what Heath is saying about Tua's upside, but there's obviously the downside of what happens with him, and I think it's clearly you got to build that into how you're evaluating him. The nice thing is, though, it's the position where if you do miss, you hopefully have some fallback options, right, especially if most people in the league don't take 2 quarterbacks. That being said, I think the upside for Lawrence is easily to join that same group of quarterbacks that Heath listed as well. And let's not forget who he was, the most hyped prospect coming out of college since Andrew Luck. So one of the most hyped prospects ever. So better than what people thought Tua was going to be. I think the thing that's nice is, yes, the Dolphins have a better wide receiver duo. I saw this today, though, that the Bengals and the Jaguars, the only 2 teams in the NFL that have 3 receivers and a tight end that were drafted in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. Take that for what it's worth, in terms of what their prospects were. But that's a pretty good place to be if you're just looking at the group. So it's the addition of Calvin Ridley, to what the receiving core looked like last year. It's what Doug Peterson was able to bring out of Trevor Lawrence. That stretch of games, is a little bit misleading, I think, because he probably would have had a couple better games if the rain situation didn't happen in that one outing when he was on fire. I believe it was against the Titans. But I love the schedule for the Jaguars. I think, just the matchups are extremely favorable. Situation just lends itself to him, I think, having the breakout season that we've been waiting for 2 years. So I'll take Lawrence safety-wise over Tua, and I think upside as well. I think he's going to have a bigger season than Tua.
The only thing I would say is, especially in a 2-quarterback or super flex league, I think the floor argument matters more. I think in a 1-quarterback league, Tua and Trevor Lawrence have the same floor. Because I can stream what Trevor Lawrence did last year, and I think what Trevor Lawrence did last year is what his floor is probably.
I guess my concern with Tua is that he lit up these terrible defenses and then really came back down to earth after that. There were definitely some circumstances, but There's a lot of games here of fewer than 18 fantasy points. Against
Part of that was the score.
one game was the score.
What, the Texans game?
The Texans game.
Well, he
Yeah.
was also getting beat up in that game too, which
Right. Look, he was great against the Texans. He scored 18 points, but he was great in that game.
yeah, but wasn't that the game where Armstead got hurt and then he started getting pummeled?
Yes. Yeah, right. He left that game because he was getting his butt kicked once Teron Armstead left, and they were really pummeling Houston. But he stunk against San Francisco. He didn't stink against San Francisco. He had 18 points. He had a 75-yard touchdown on the first play of the game, and then the offense was awful after that. He stunk against the Chargers. He was fine against the Bills. He was terrible against the Packers, but he was playing through concussions, it seems. So there are a lot of excuses. But if you look at the game log, more bad games than good games for Tua. That's my point. I mean, we can't completely forget about weeks 1 and week 3. They existed.
But we would agree that, like, in the NFL, Tua has been better than Trevor Lawrence.
No, I would not agree with. You forget, like, Tua
was benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean,
yeah,
let's not forget that too.
It wasn't good.
But well, if we're counting that year though, like Trevor, we're not going to hold that against him because Trevor Lawrence was like QB 31 his rookie year.
Okay, so what if we just compared their second seasons? I would say Lawrence's was better.
That's probably true. Yeah. Now that's comparing Tua 2 years ago to Lawrence last year.
Yes.
Okay. Because Tua was definitely better last year.
Yeah, Tua was he better last year? Who scored more points per game?
Tua, 1.5 points better.
With the Bengals game, including the Bengals game,
including all games. Yeah.